And welcome. We are live with an incredible show with Andrea Foulkes. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrew. I'm so excited. This is my first Google Hangout, and obviously, I love your work as well, so I'm really excited.
Very, very cool. And we connected just a few weeks ago, and we hit it off right away. And I said I have to do a show with her. So why don't you tell the audience about yourself?
Well, to cut a long story short, I had a big awakening about 13, 14 years ago. I knew nothing about spiritual stuff, like lots of people now. It just like you're awakening really quickly. So I very, very quickly from my awakening was told lots of things that I knew nothing about. But the bottom end or top end of that was that I very quickly ended up on TV in the UK doing past life regression. But I could read people's timelines, or because I can't actually say the word Ashaic, Akaish. I don't say that word, so I just say timelines. So I was regressing people to past lives in the UK. On TV, and then I have my own show doing that. But privately, I take people back to reading the records, past lives, inner child therapy, ancestral work as well, a bit like you, and also looking for entities as well and releasing those. And I now, for the last 3 years, have been publicly speaking light language as well. So it's a bit, the whole thing, it's not just one thing, it's like everything. You're just into everything to do with evolving consciousness and what I would say is enlightened living, really.
Very, very cool. You want to give the audience a sample of what the light language is like?
Yeah, shall we do, this is, if everybody just sits there and closes their eyes, because that's the best way to bring it in. Let's just do one that's linked to the collective group that's listening, which will be, if you're new to light language, it will just be one for opening your heart chakra to the level that's appropriate for your soul at this point in time, and also to enable you to take in the information that Andrew and I are going to share today. Not through your heads, through your hearts. So just take a deep breath, close your eyes, put your hands maybe palm up on your knees, and just breathe in and allow whatever sounds come through me to just ripple through your physical body. So Ekomoya kisimiania kimoya. Ekomoya kisimiania kimia, ukomoya kisimiania kimia. Ikimia okomoya kisimiania kimia.
Very nice. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. And breathe out.
Hmm.
So for anyone who's new to light language, you might have felt it like ripple through your whole body, or you just might feel emotions coming up. Just allow that to happen, or you might even feel like you're hearing it later, like echoing in your head. It works on a very deep cell memory level, and it is the sound that your soul remembers from the beginnings of time. So that's why it resonates with you.
Absolutely, and the same reason when I'm reading stuff from the Akashic Record, it rings outside of time. It goes to the foundations of time. And when
Yeah.
people hear truth in a frequency and a vibration, whether it's through a light language or the reading of the Akashic Records or someone telling their sovereign truth in such a way that it attracts the fullness of life to the subject matter, that's ultimately what both Andrea and I are both doing here. We both lead to the same end, which is unity amongst all species and an agreement amongst all species that we have 100% contrast control. We need not fight each other in any way, shape, or form, and we can still learn and have rich experiences amongst each other. We just must have that common moral code, that common ethic that says we can be sovereign beings at all times, and we can have creative experiences in light language or human expression or even in materialism or consumerism, but we must find balance within our own beings.
Yeah, and I think it's about, honoring that people are at different places in their journey because of their soul lineage. as well. And so for maybe the few people who are watching who maybe don't know who Andrew is, I'll just explain how I found out about you. I don't know how I found out. I love YouTube because I just think, you know, forget about TV, just tune in and watch YouTube. Everything's out there. And you don't know this, but I came across, Andrew is a galactic historian, so I think I'm right in saying that you are a conscious channel for 54 million years of history on this planet.
I'm not a channel.
So it's a conscious
connection to the stream of information, and there's a second of me that's in the future, a second of me in the past, part of me in the North Pole and the South Pole, and I'm in all ancestral connections amongst 20,000 separate Akashic records. So I function in all frequencies of the Akashic record that are linked to this specific slice of time.
Yeah, fabulous. So I watched your first clip, and then I just cancelled what I was doing that day, and I watched all the 15 episodes. Like, I just lay there, which was like 10 hours. I just lay there and downloaded this whole 10 hours of information, which was truly just, I was like, wow, someone's saying the stuff that I know, but I don't necessarily know how to vocalize, but I'm seeing it in the people that I'm regressing, and I'm seeing that the true history is coming out. And then there was another interview that, if you haven't seen it, with Veronica Keenan Island, the 3 parts there. And in the third part, I just felt like my crown chakra just went and opened up. It was like zing, because it was like, this is the thing, you know, what both Andrea and I are going to say is that when you hear the truth, you will have a reaction. That's like with clients, when we both, in the way we do our work, when you know, we share the truth, you hear it on a soul level. And I know with my clients that they often just burst into tears, because it's
same here. Many burst into tears, or have extremely hard moments where they look inside themselves and they can go through the shuddering process and begin remembering.
Yeah, because you see, the big thing that's happened, and because I did this on TV, and I haven't maybe shared this, and this is really significant to the work that Andrew's doing, is that by the time I went from This Morning and onto a show called Have I Been Here Before, we would be sat there with a producer in another room who would have a classic historian, you know, somebody who's been to university, studied history, read all the books. And so I'd be regressing someone. In my ear, I'd have talk back of someone going, oh, you know what, historically we don't like that lifetime, Andrea, can you move on? Well, ethically I have to think about the person I'm regressing, but also I know that the person I'm regressing is coming out with the true history, which has been removed from the history books. So this historian, well-meaning as they are, because, you know, they don't truly know any better. You know, they've gone to university, they've read the history books, they've got their PhD or whatever in history, or their master's in history, but they don't know that they're fed a lie, which leads me to now, for you, Andrew, to explain the corrupted timelines, which probably some of those people are in.
Okay, well, we first thing first is we're not on the, let me describe this the easiest way, because it's giant, it's multi-dimensional, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to the 20 Galactic Historian shows that Andrea was talking about, that ignited her into this new understanding here, is 54 million years ago, a concept called timeline genocide was introduced to our environment here, and our ancestors were erased, our physical experience was erased, and we had shared our DNA knowledge and wisdom with other species. And when we got erased through timeline genocide, it set off this firestorm of other beings who also lost their experience through 1 degree of separation. And this is what started this time war concept, as well as the spiritual invasion concept, where Earth went from 2 trillion living beings to 500 trillion beings in a few short centuries from the mass migrations here, because the experience here was so vitally different than everywhere else. and we were in a new free-willed universe, timeline genocides, uncreational events, until finally the universe was created again. Not recreated, a creational event helped the uncreational event, where everyone was losing their experience. And this is where we started paradoxical existence, where the 66 prime planets that were creating timeline genocide and propagating amongst other galaxies, and it even reached into other universes, everything was sent to a single galaxy, so massive karmic resolution can become underway. Well, there comes a point when you put 500 trillion beings into a single system, they don't always follow the plan, and they create things called paradoxes, where we must finish this process, and we start it, and when we get into a paradox, we start over from the very beginning, and we don't always make the same choices when we do it the second time. And then we made it another uncreational event, and we started over again, and we started a third time. But the previous two times we were doing it were also simultaneously running. And there were beings who were aware of this, and they began operating on the two different paradoxes and trying to transfer concepts from one to the other so that choice points would be changed. And then we did it a third time. Okay, and then there's beings on all three paradox timelines going, we can do something. And they created timeline wars amongst all three, and we went to tens of millions of different timelines. This would be between 18 million years ago and 12 million years ago during the Lemurian Atlantean expression. And then we had our fourth paradox. So we are now 4 simultaneously running events. We're the fifth. This is where it all comes to an end, where everything we've learned on the 5 paradoxes simultaneously existing now, that we have done all experiences in Earth. We have been the good, we have been the bad, we have been the light, we've been the dark, we've been the ugly, we've been the beauty, we've been the princess, we've been the princess, and we've been the evil witch. We've been everything. And the vast majority of beings in this world are so damaged from doing everything so many times, because there are other beings that are higher frequency, higher vibration, who still have ego, who still believe that they are the masters of our species, because they came in here with these concepts of external gods, and we began praying to them. And we are conscious manifesting beings, and when we manifest something, we pray to a being that's another off-world species, it gets ego, and their ego gets blown up psychically, and they develop skills and become bonded to Earth on what's a thing called the divinity path. And the divinity path has good sides and bad sides, because they're promoting this concept of light and dark, when in fact we are multifunctional, multidimensional beings of light, and we do not need to have just 2 experiences of light and dark. There are third options and fourth options and fifth options that the rest of the universe uses. But for here, the basic concept of light battling dark and dark battling light was enforced as a macro choice concept to exist here in the 66 planets of the prime dramas. So if you're here to resolve karma, you are here as part of the macro understanding of light and dark. And to graduate here, to finish this process here, we realize that light does not need to battle dark, nor does dark need to battle light. Each is an individual expression with their individual truths that must be honored and respected from both sides. There's also the understanding that there's the neutral perspective, which is the planet holds the neutral space for all sentients to come in and have their experience. And that planet is held space by a solar system. That solar system is held space by a galaxy, and that galaxy is held space by a universe. And that shows the different degrees of different entities that are well vested into our free will, because we are the micro beings who have turned out how to change macro beings' experiences, quite literally. And we are on the cusp of a new understanding of our DNA legacy, of what went on in Atlantis and Lemuria, what went on in the timeline genocide wars, what went on in your personal heart's history, why you've been in the reincarnation and out of reincarnation, why life has been hard and bad, why there's a political organization at the top that calls itself a church, and yet all the people that are within this church are bound by rules and dogmas that don't even express the true nature of love. And that applies to every religion out there, because every single major religion got it wrong. Every single one. The closest one out there is the Buddhists, and they were still quite wrong. Every single one of those religious concepts were hijacked and brought to us to this external concept instead of an internal. And when you work with people, Andrea, you know it's all inside. And when you run into those external personalities, you know that that's a healing lifetime, that they had to go external because something happened.
Yeah, and there's so much to it, and I think, you know, because you speak really out there, and I try and like make it baby basic for people, which is like they doubt their experiences, they don't trust what they're experiencing themselves, and you know, the problem is because they can't reference this outside of themselves, they then start to doubt their own experience. And even when I regress people, the biggest problem you see with people is they go, oh, I think I made all that up. And you know, from my experience, you know, I've done over 20,000 hours of regressing people. I'm like, you didn't make that up. That is your truth of your soul, but we've given our power away to external, one, deities, to TV, to news. We don't trust our own experience, and it's to empower people now to go, you must trust your own experience. And you know, when you get to the point where you're being shown things in dream times, in meditations, you can start to interact with it yourself. Yeah, you can, you know, contact people like Andrew and myself, and we can help you process this stuff maybe quicker than if you did it on your own. Because, you know, I had to have a session with Andrew the other day, because I can do this with people, but there is some stuff I couldn't see in my own stuff, which I needed to get to the bottom of, which, you know, has really been helpful to me.
And when it comes to sessions, everyone gets something out of it, especially when you have somebody holding space for you, so you can begin the understanding process. You know, Andrea has had the ups and downs of her life, you know, been into the TV industry and then moving on to where she is because she had a moral code she wouldn't give up, she wouldn't sacrifice. And because she didn't sacrifice her moral code, she got riddled and riled, and to me too. You get the trolls out there, but you know what? You don't let those get to you, because at this stage of the game, we can't work in the trenches with the trolls anymore. We're at the point where we, the people that are stepping forward, helping people understand in 26-letter alphabet, we're an infinite being. And let me tell you something, with 26 letters, it is really, really hard. And, you know, there are people that send me emails saying that my phrasing and wordology and my speech patterns are so weird to them or so different to them that they stop and they'll listen to the same line 6 or 7 times, or they'll listen to the Galactic History show, some of the other ones I do, and they'll pick out sections and go, I have never had anything ever explain something to me so complex and so
But they get
layered,
it.
but they get it. The
And
thing is,
that's
some people get just this much, but that's all their soul needs is that much. And there are those that get this much. And those that get this much, I'm talking to you through here right now, you need to get more. You need self-healing and self-nurturing time to understand that this coming in here into 26 letters needs 1,000 letters to express. There is so much more that both Andrea and I could say, but it would fall upon deaf ears if there's not an audience of adepts who are already familiar with the experience, because we're trying to
but
describe you as an experience that you've never had.
but I think the good thing is it's a bit like, you know, in the past, you know, before we had YouTube and like Google Hangout now, I used to say to people, you know, read books, listen to stuff. It doesn't matter if you don't understand something just now, because you can put it to one side, whether it's a YouTube clip or whatever it is, or a book, and you can go back to it sometimes in days or weeks later, and you get it because you've expanded your consciousness. It's like growing like a peanut into a melon. You're awakening to who you truly are, and the infinite consciousness in you has the ability to absorb this information. And I always say to people, don't listen with your head because you're trying to intellectually understand it. Just let it go in. It's almost like in the way that we speak, you're not actually needing to hear the words. It's the rhythmic pattern of the vibration, which is a code which goes into you on a deep cell memory level, into your DNA, and activates an awakening in you. That's what the light language does. That's what it does when you just listen to what we're saying.
Andrea, look at the top of your screen and see if your video, yeah, your video, it just cut out there for a second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, just a
Maybe
second.
the
You're going
far
high
went by.
frequency. Something to get used to there.
Yeah, you can disappear sometimes because
Yeah.
your frequency can
Yeah,
change.
there's a shimmer and a hue around you. But yeah, what you're saying is so true, and in the light language, and people have asked me, is what I'm saying out of the Akashic Truth into English right now, is that a light language? Well, that's a good thing. Was English created as a light language? No, English was created as a language to limit you by intonation and vibration, to set you up for programs. But it also can be turned around because it was created as a limitation. Means it could also be created as something heavily advanced. And we are at the time as a species where we have to make a choice at what we believe in, because our beliefs mean absolutely everything. We are manifesting, co-creating master beings here who are being fooled by propaganda. And from your own story, Andrea, you've seen how the industry inside television can easily corrupt a person's morals.
Yeah, I mean, there's many stories I haven't really shared about, the TV industry. And I've been in TV, I'm 44 now, but I've been in TV on some level since I was 18. I have a background in modeling TV commercials. Then a lot of I worked on QVC, and then I was into TV sort of on various different shows over the period of time. And remember, there is a free will choice in the universe. There is always free will, not just for me, but for everybody. There is a point where you choose. What do you choose? There's a moral barometer in you which knows, okay, why am I doing this? Do I really need to do this? And in an evolved state of consciousness, there are certain things that are wrong. And once you can't be lured by the lure of money, and you can't be lured by the ego of, oh, I want to be a celebrity, which is what they're trying to do with a lot of kids right now. Kids want to be famous for no reason. Just, I want to be famous, I want to be on TV. And then that's the kind of slippery slope. If you're going to go out there publicly, do it because you have a gift and a skill that is worth sharing, but know where your line is. Know where you don't sell yourself out. There is a fine line where you can have a public profile, but you don't have to sell yourself out. But a lot of people are reclaiming their power by controlling it themselves now. YouTube gives you the ability to control what you want to share. Now, it's not edited. It's not misrepresentation, which was what happened in the end for me. Was it was being edited out of context. I wanted it to be about healing and showing how you can heal from going into your past lives and healing those timelines, but it was being more like, oh, can we reconstruct this? And then it was getting into a big budget from a TV point of view, which was not really my intention for it. And so kind of I didn't really want to be involved in it much more. And also, from a TV point of view, people think they know what they're doing. They don't understand that you can't film X hours a day and not get drained myself. They don't see that the location that you use is very important because of the energy of that location. So there are lots of things that are people's ignorance and people's ability to want to try and, obviously I understand from a TV point of view it's got to make money, but also it's got to have morals and integrity for me to be involved in it. And it's the same for all of us. It's like this big story around money right now. It's like you said to me the other day, Andrew, yeah, money's got to be cleaned in a clean way. Money in itself will eventually phase out, but right now it isn't. And right now we need to have a relationship with it, but a healthy one.
Absolutely. And to have a healthy relationship with money and a skill set that you're bringing towards a changing world means that you have coping skills to deal with the monetary aspect of the 3D world and your fourth door world, that the two worlds have figured out how to work simultaneously together. Because when they don't, as a light worker or as a healer or any of those other terminologies that you want to do, you have given yourself the label and the limitations of that label if you don't have self-healing and self-nurturing skills. You are not to be a healer if you can't nurture yourself. And
Yeah,
I have
and this
met many, many people who want to do what you do or what I do or be the healers, and they heal and heal and heal until they are sick.
Yeah, and I made a video the other day about this, the light worker industry burning yourselves out. And you see what the kind of cabal, Illuminati kind of thing, which we've all been part of. If you probably look at your timelines, you've all been part of it on some
Absolutely
level.
everyone.
And,
Everyone's in the reincarnation grid. That means you've all been part of the different Masonic orders that have built the sacred geometry infrastructure you all live in. And that sacred geometry infrastructure has hijacked the original ley lines of Earth. That's why we live in a world that's of two worlds, a world of separation, even though it isn't separated. Only our minds, our left and right hemisphere minds. And that's what they've done on the surface of our world.
and I think what's happening with the people now, and I see it because Facebook's a fantastic. Facebook is my outlet to the world of seeing what's really going on with the people, because you can see what they're posting, what they're interested in, but they want there to be a victim and a victimizer. And while you're still in that story of victim and victimizer, you're not going to get out of this drama.
Exactly.
And this is the problem. Everyone wants the government to be wrong. Everyone wants to find that Obama's bad. Because I made a post the other day about something he said. Everybody shared that. But really, all it's doing, and they want you to be angry. This is what you don't get. They want you to be angry. When you're angry, you're in their powerful control.
When you're angry, you're in adrenal gland response, and the scalar weapons can affect you. The programs can affect you. The psychic parasites can affect you, because that's how they set up the rules of the reality. And you never got a human handbook at birth that says what they can do with you, and you be an unawareness for it to affect you. That's why fear kills the mind.
And this is why, if anybody's ever seen me, like there's a clip going around YouTube where I speak out on the Illuminati on the BBC. But I laugh. And the reason I'm laughing is not because I'm mocking it and ridiculing it. I'm not in the drama aspect of it. I'm not looking for a victim, and I'm not the victim, and they're not the victimizer.
And you're not being a tyrant or a dictator either. It's very important, because those are applied to this too.
Yeah, and you explain that quite well. In how you explain the story of the history, because you're not biased to any side of it. You're just telling it from a neutral perspective, and it's like
the perspective of the planet.
Yeah, and the thing is, though,
space for all beings, because they're all her children, every single one, and every being that is living on this planet that came here by a vessel has been adopted by Earth as a refugee soul or as an adopted son or daughter. And it's very important to understand that the planet doesn't allow anyone on here that it doesn't want here.
And you're in a game, and it's a bit like you've got to fathom out the game. And it's a bit like, when people on a basic level now, they're angry about the money, the banking systems, they're angry about the genetically modified foods, but you created that somewhere in your timeline. You didn't want the responsibility for your money. You didn't want the responsibility for your food. You didn't question where this food's coming from. Oh, just make it quick and easy. You created this. They're selling this because you buy it. When you take your power back and you go, you know what, I'm not buying this stuff. I'm going to be really mindful about how I spend my money. I'm not going to take out a mortgage for something I can't afford anymore. You have to take responsibility. And I know people don't like that. They're not very keen at this point in time to be taking, but that's taking back your power. Taking responsibility is taking back your power. Ranting and trying to make the governments change is futile. It doesn't work like that.
That's right. And it's like a game of multi-dimensional chess, except you don't have one board, you have thousands of boards, and you're a part of other people's boards that are other frequencies much higher in expression in you that don't have physical bodies here on Earth, but they're still as much a part of this game as you, the being on here, that may be trying to affect the macro world out there or the macro world of the United States. Whatever it is, from radio host to bricklayer, you're all affecting the macro world some way, shape, or form, whether you're aware of it or not. When you sleep, you have an entire dreaming world that you may not be aware of what you're doing. I mean, there's so many clients that I run across in their dream worlds. They do such amazing things, but they're disconnected from their dream worlds. Why? Because the system of domination and control, when it was setting up the big 10,000-year Ponzi scheme that we're all a part of, because that's what it is, a 10,000-year Ponzi scheme, They built these sacred geometry cities. They killed our indigenous flame keepers and oral historians, and they brought about the 40-hour work week, which made it very easy for you to give away your power to the food industry, to give away your power, because there were workers over there in the food industry who by heart space were still connected to you, to the dream worlds in the 1900s, because they had just left their farms to just have their first sets of jobs in industry, and there was a trust that the food would not poison your own children, because you wouldn't put out poison food for somebody else's children. That was still part of our social consciousness then, and that has been bred out of us over 3 generations, multiple wars, to the point where we don't check our GMO food, we don't pray over our food, we don't do any of that stuff you're talking about, because we've assigned somebody else to do it, and those other people we've assigned to do it have esoteric underpinnings that lead back to who? The Masons, the Rosicrucians, the different religious orders, the nefarious orders. Every single thing leads back to where? That we were a species that has amnesia, and there's been multiple other species, on-world and off-world, who've tried to define our history as lies. And we're finding lies, 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 and more lies everywhere. And until science, spirituality, and humanity come to a way to consciously apply the sacred technologies, we will be on this spiraling hurdle of separation, even though we are non-separate, until the rubber band slaps us back from the finite reflection of who we are to the infinite reflection, and we simply shut off this 3D world. But that's not
And
ultimately what the big beings want. They want us to take our culture. They want us to take our history, good and bad. They want us to take everything and become teachers from what we've learned here. Teachers in awareness, not teachers in unawareness.
no, and I think on a really just a basic psychological level, people are going through this process now because they go, but I believe this stuff. And now, in the UK, what we have is a lot of well-known public figures that maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, people really loved. They were in their childhood. They were projected as figures you would love. And now they're all falling out of the woodwork as pedophiles. And people
Jimmy
are going,
Savile, for example.
yeah, and people are going, this can't be true. I liked him as a child. This can't be true. If it's true, then everything I believed in might have been a lie, which is good, because then, yeah, half of what you believed in, if not more, was a lie. But you have to accept and forgive yourself. I mean, truly forgive yourself for buying into the lies, because it's okay. It was part of the experience. You couldn't know any other. You weren't awake enough to discern the difference at that point in evolution in consciousness. So when you thought he was great as a kid, whoever it is who is a public profile that's now come out as a pedophile, you have to now forgive yourself because you trusted that person. And what it's doing on a deeper psychological level is making people go, but I don't trust myself now. I don't trust myself. But
ultimately,
okay.
they didn't trust themselves in the first place, and that's how a pedophile like Jimmy Savile made it to television, because they'd already given away enough of their sovereign free will in other lifetimes that they can put the shell game up there, where it's a physical body possessed by some darkness. Doesn't matter if it's really the real Jimmy Savile or not. It doesn't matter. The acts are still done.
Yeah, and we've been brought up to, we've come through a generation where we must trust the adults, and that isn't necessarily the right thing to do. A child who might now be an adult, but even a child has to trust their own intuition. Children in general don't lie. If a child doesn't feel comfortable around someone, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why someone doesn't feel comfortable. But a lot of us have been through the process as a child who we've been through a lot of abuse. And a lot of people where there is abuse, you will have amnesia. It won't necessarily mean that you will necessarily remember the abuse at this point in your awakening. As you awaken, you might start to get flashbacks to it in dream time, or it might come up in therapy. And it's very challenging for you if you didn't remember it when it starts to come up in therapy. I had an experience myself that A lady who's very psychic said to me once, you know, did anything ever happen to you when you were 5? And I was like, 5? No, no, no. And it took, you know, and I'm a therapist and I know this stuff inside out. And it took 3 more years for that repressed cell memory to come to the surface. And when it did, of course, yeah, I remembered it, but I blocked it out because I didn't want to remember it. Right. But that's part of your healing, is allowing it to come to the surface, forgiving the person. Okay, the thing I always say to people is, no, their actions will never be wrong, but for you to be free, you need to forgive their soul so you can move forward, you can benefit. This isn't about the other person. This is about you getting the benefit.
Okay. That's incredible. Something else to add there, you know, there are times that abuse takes on in the dream world alone. And I run into so many of my clients that have no dream world and haven't had a dream world for many years. And that's because they suffered tremendous abuse by entities while they were dreaming. And that's why many people have had their childhood stolen from them. And I say that because they don't remember their childhoods, because those entities are feeding off of those dreaming moments that are still existing for you, and you don't even realize that you've been broken up that way. Just recently, I was working on a client. I'm not going to mention names. I've worked on him many, many times, but he was incredibly dream time harvested when he was very young. His DNA lineage was identified as a being that could be very powerful if he was allowed to come to his full power. So every few months, these entities would check in on him and just drain his kundalini to almost nothing, and then trigger an acidic action response in his body, so his liver would just keep dumping liver stones on him every couple months, which caused spiraling depressions to take over, caused headaches to take over, and he lived like that for almost 15 years until he found biofeedback that he could end some of the headaches, and he found me, and I helped him work through what was going on in those dream states of being attacked and being harmed. And those are just as bad, because those are recorded into your energy body in your sternum, and I call this the sternum shield. And it's where people take these sledgehammer hits to their soul, and their body doesn't know how to respond to it, and all it does is take all the pain and puts it somewhere on the body, and then that manifests as a sickness or as a habit pattern of self-destruction.
Yeah, and people don't understand that illness is happening to show them that they're out of alignment with their higher self and who they truly are. But the mainstream media have made you go, oh no, you go to a doctor and they give you some pharmaceutical drugs, which is a control mechanism by the Illuminati families and the cabal to dumb you down and control you, and population control. They have no vested interest in healing and helping you. That isn't what's going on here. Exactly. The people that you see on the front line, the nurses and the doctors, yeah, maybe their intention is to help you, but they don't understand that they're not helping you, because they've been dumbed down and brainwashed to believe that they're helping the people. So yeah, their intention is well-meaning, but they're being controlled by the puppet masters behind the scenes. So yeah, you may be listening to this and you may be a doctor or a nurse and you may be furious listening to us because your intention is well-meaning, but actually you're not being allowed to do what you're really here to do.
Exactly, and that's the example of lies, 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 and more lies. You know, when we start asking about why does our medical industry not heal people but butcher people, and they're going to say right away that heal this, this, and this. Well, cancer is a $50 billion a year industry. You're healing less than 1% of them. 60% of them are dying after being on meds for 7 years or 11 years. Let's look at those facts. You want more lies? Let's look at those passports, those IDs, those derivatives, the fact that there's bonds on every single human being who's ever had a Social Security number or any representation of a Social Security number in every country. Okay, that means that you are under the corporate law. Under the corporate law, that you have corporate karma, which means that they have access to your post office box. All of your post office box were historically started by who? The popes of Rome, so that when warriors went out in war, that the church could give them the rules of where they were going to attack. And yes, it is that intertwined. And if you are still in that level of denial, then the denial is a river in Egypt for you, and that is your reality, and that's your reality to create. But I'm telling you right now, I'm creating another reality. I'm a master of my own reality, and I'm going to manifest peace, love, hope, and unity here, as well as Andrea and many of the millions of others that are coming out of the woodwork to stay. Pull your heads out of the sand, okay?
And, and I think one of the biggest problems we've got going on at the moment is what I would call, and I see it play out on Facebook, it's like light people who think they're light workers arguing with what we're saying,
Right, because
and
they're
this
doing
is,
what? They're being the tyrants.
yeah. And you know, this is what they want you to do. They want the light workers to be arguing amongst themselves, because then they've created conflict. And don't do that. Okay, don't let your ego get involved. If Andrew or I or somebody else posts something that you don't agree with, don't go on their wall ranting and disagreeing. Observe your own reaction. Even if you have this desire to want to do it, question, why do I want to do that? If I see something on somebody's wall that I don't agree with, I just let it go. It's not
Right.
in my story. I'm neutral to this stuff. I have the right to share my truth, okay? It might not feel like your truth, but I have the right to share my truth, as does Andrew have the right to share his truth. If you don't agree with it, just move along, but
Right.
don't get involved in debate, because debate is really low vibration. It's not a positive
Right.
vibration, debate.
I call them pontificating philosophers. All they do is pontificate and never do.
Go ahead.
Pontificate, pontificate. That's all they do. And when it comes to that example, Facebook is a classic example of factions inside factions inside factions. And guess what? You're all being played by a different faction who's playing another faction. So the answer is don't answer it. If you want to make a comment that's positive, put a comment on. You have a choice to not make a comment. So the next time you see a troll on the wall and you know all he wants is you to type one letter back to him, so the next 5 sentences he's already got in his head because he's been waiting all day to hit someone. It doesn't matter if it's you or the next person up there. And then the next layer to understand is that person's psychic energy is behind that post. And what are you engaging in energy-wise when you are back and forth on Facebook? From a psychic's perspective, it's psychic warfare at times, literally warfare. And there are paid people that are doing that to be warfare psychic specialists. There are trolls that are out there that are targeting hosts because they know if they hit them with a whole bad wave of negative energy just before a radio show, they may screw up and lose their audience, and then the next thing you know, they're spiraling out of control. I've seen this time and time and time and time and time again. You know what? When it comes to Facebook and the social consciousness, stop the energy. And I'm going to mention something. Last year, I gave out some of the most vital pieces of information, so vital that it came to self-healing and self-nurturing and being aware of what's going on between the 14th of June and the 14th of July. They're going to release another massive wave of psychic parasites on the 20th of June. And you thought last year was bad? I gave you guys 2 months warning about it. And when it came, you all came flushing to me to have these parasites removed. You all came running to me. And the answer is you can't. It's a tidal wave of psychic parasites that have had an entire year of Sandy Hook, an entire year of Crimea, an entire year of our nasty-ass history backing them up, because that's where they were created. And they're going to release these through the porn sites, through Facebook sites, through trolls, through all of these other social media sites, through the news, through the propaganda. And it's going to make its way through, and you're going to watch people pop and blow up on the internet and quit and turn off their accounts, and you're going to see people ranting and raving just like last year. And I will go far as to say that it'll be so bad this year that by come 4th of July, that people are going to be leaving social media in droves.
Yeah, well, it's owned by the CIA at the end of the day, isn't it? It's like, but people don't realize that. But you know, you can use it to your advantage. I haven't always used it in a healthy way to myself, but it's made me stronger by the experience to
And
understand.
it also saved your business.
Yeah, it's been
It's
good on a lot of
right for
levels.
me too, and I have misused it and used it properly. And believe it or not, you can spend $30 to boost a Facebook post. What does
Yeah.
that do? What does that do for the psychic? I'm boosting my own post, spending $30. And yes, I'll admit I have given Facebook money, and you could, oh, there's a whole new set of, troll detractors. I'm giving Facebook, I'm this, I'm that. I did it for the energy to find out what it was.
What
That's
was
what I
it?
did it for. Oh, there is energy in marketing in Facebook. And it's all
Mm.
capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. And you can use that against them. As been proven by Project Ramrod and Project Ramrod 2, we were able to force 10,000 likes onto a page that was fully suppressed by NSA on Facebook. And you can break those algorithms. It just takes people, creativity, and a big middle finger to them.
Mm. And people don't realize then, a lot of your posts aren't being shown because, like you said, it's an algorithm. If a few people like it, then they'll show it to, they'll
Right.
feed
Less
it
and less and
into.
less.
But it's like, I know people aren't seeing my stuff. I've got like just
Yeah,
on
me
one
too.
page alone. I know they're not seeing it. It's like 10,000 people and only a few hundred people are seeing it. So it's not really the best use of your time. And when you receive a lot of people trying to attack you, like you said, exactly, I would know if I did a TV show, I'd get just before I'd be about to go on air, it would be foolish for me to read my emails or stuff because someone would attack me. And I
Exactly.
just had to get stronger. And in the beginning, it would wobble me. I'd be like, oh, because every time I would do something, someone would try and bring me down emotionally. It would
Like a
just be,
perfect chess move every time.
yeah,
You knew it was
yeah.
there, and all you had to do was walk away from it, and that energy would never affect you.
Yeah, and you can get sucked in, and then you got to step back and go, okay, what is this? What is this? This is not real. It's trying to get me engaged in a drama and a story that isn't really my reality. It's like the other week, like we were looking at my surname the other day when we did our session, and my surname goes back to the second king of Jerusalem, which is Jewish, and then I get accused of being anti-Semitic,
Yep.
and yet my family history of the ancestral timeline is Jewish. So, and this came from a post that I was writing about male circumcision, which was nothing really to do with being Jewish. Yes, it's a practice that goes on within the Jewish faith, but it also goes on in other faiths and outside of faiths on health benefit levels, which there's no World Health Organization that says there's any need to do this. And as a therapist, I explain what happens is someone who's been circumcised, not everyone, but most people I've seen as adults who've been circumcised have trust issues, anger issues, and intimacy issues.
Absolutely. Because of the trauma of coming out of the womb, having your amniotic sac torn off, your umbilical cord off, slapped in the ass, 22 vaccinations, and stuck in the incubator, and not allowed to be on your mother's heart for 4 days. And then
Exactly.
could include cutting off the tip of the penis, and everything you just said, even better, it makes it for a perfect soldier, doesn't it? Or for the
And
perfect
then
slave.
yeah, and then you wonder why, especially in London, and I see a lot of people who, okay, I'm not saying it's the premise of bankers, but you wonder why people like going to fetish parties and being spanked. Because your first human experience of touch was being spanked. That's why you get off on it. You associate to that. And then you're going in the dark, slippery slope. That isn't
Exactly.
love. It's not
Exactly.
from the heart. And people
That,
don't
the
understand that.
naughty spanking thing, and again, that's how the churches did it too. That's why they wanted to smack you and hit you in the early times, because ultimately they were preparing for you if you were chosen. And if we go back to the early 1900s or the early 1800s in any of the big cities, the police officers were so corrupt there that they didn't enforce. There was no such thing as a rape law. And the neighborhood rapist was the guy at the bar, that nothing was ever done with him, other than the woman coming up behind him and hitting him in the head with a bottle or stabbing him in the back or shooting him. That was justice for women then. And we have justice for women now, but it took a long time for it to get out of the culture. Because, growing up, in those times, 80% of the children were abused. 80%. And that's what's passed on from generation to generation. You go back 300 years ago or even 200 years ago, the vast majority of the working population that didn't have fresh water drank grog or rum because they didn't have fresh water, and the average blood alcohol content that they had every day was 0.17. They were wasted drunk, full of hormones. And give them carbohydrates and a bad diet on top of that. They are the perfect machine to do what? To be violent and angry.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's still running in their DNA.
Still in their mind, in the race memory that they don't even know exists, but it's still
Yeah.
affecting them.
And because we've been on this planet in a very strong patriarchal system, the divine feminine has been removed out of the history books. You've got this patriarchal system. And even now I look at many women who, some of them have been my clients, and then we get to the tipping point where they have to look at the relationship they're in, and they don't want to look at that because if they looked at it, they'd have to see that they were in a bullying, controlling, verbally abusive relationship. They might not be in a physically abusive relationship, but they're in some kind of abusive relationship. And it's too painful for them to look at that.
Yeah, the abusive relationships. You look at why people stay in abusive relationships. More than likely, they started an abusive relationship. And I run across this, the clients say, I was never abused, never abused. I'm like, well, did your parents argue when you were young? Oh, all the time, but I never was abused. That's still abuse to a
Yeah, they
child
don't.
that's incredibly psychic and absorbing all of it. And I'm looking at this being, because I don't just see the physical use, I see every dimension and time space that you're living in. And that's just the facts that people are going to have to come to. Everyone is 100% transparent to me. Child abuse is child abuse, the sexual abuse. The verbal and spiritual abuse that goes on to children who are stuck between parents that are arguing about debt, or parents that are arguing about how to raise the child when they're right in front of you, that's verbal and psychic diarrhea that the child's absorbing all the time.
Yeah, and now I see people who are adults, and you know, being around people like us will make it difficult for you to hide, the lies that you're living. So I see a lot of women who say things like, oh, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. That's abuse. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells to be in a relationship with somebody, that's abuse.
Right. You've been suppressed enough that you will be what?
Well,
Submissive.
yeah,
Submissive.
and and
What is
and
submissive? What is the submissive woman that's coming out of sexual domination? Why they're submissive like that?
because they
And
don't
you,
know any other.
right, and usually that means the man who's being aggressive has some type of aggressive psychic pheromone that makes it very easy for them to be submissive because they've done this reincarnation Neanderthal grid so many millions of times that it's so easy for them to just fall back into that habit pattern.
Yeah, and we have this society where we kind of go, oh, for a guy, we're like, oh, it's okay, it's part of being a guy that you might go to a prostitute. Uh, well, for me, from a woman's point of view, I'm like, but then the guy isn't loving himself, because why would a guy who truly loves himself want to have sex with a woman who's just having sex with him for money?
Right. Exactly. The prostitute example is the perfect, perfect, perfect example of cultural and society going, all right, women are going through their own change. If man can't get it, go and pay for it. That's taking away from the divine masculine power and making organizations such as strip clubs or sex slavery rings be possible for the system of domination and control because they implanted that into our culture and tried to make it culturally acceptable.
Yeah, and I have lots of clients who've used prostitutes, go to strip clubs. I have female clients who've been strippers, been prostitutes, and you've got to forgive yourself. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, you've got to forgive yourself, but you've got to go beyond forgiving yourself. You have to go into the origin of why that behavior is happening. So that's what I do. I take them back to the origin and clear it out on a cell memory level, so you can then fall into the heart and make choices from the heart, because you're being jerked around by your sacral chakra. You're being pulled in all these kinds of directions. And if the base chakra isn't there for the survival and grounding, then you'll drop into sexuality for making a living.
Exactly. You'll fall into that sexuality, recreational sexuality, which turns to work sexuality. And thus you have something like a porn industry that arises where they're doing what? They are promoting something that is not natural human to do. Those movies are not natural in any way, shape, or form, and everyone watching them knows it, and they don't care because their aggressive side, their adrenal side, their hormonic side has taken over this cultural concept of release, 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 release. When in fact, the real release that the vast majority of men are looking for is an orgasmic response where the feminine has having that at the same time, and that there's not a membrane of separation between the two of them, such as a condom, okay, with the worry of getting pregnancy, with all those other things that are invested into that moment where the woman who's going through her own things can be worried about getting pregnant because she's on the pill and there's a 1% chance the pill doesn't work. That recreational sex has no chance of becoming true sacred sexuality.
And you know, taking the pill messes with your natural divine cycles.
Yep.
And you know, if you go back, you have the ability, you've lost this ability. When I talk about this, people go, I can't believe that's the truth. You know, like, you don't have to be pregnant if you don't want to be pregnant. That's
Exactly.
the power of your own divinity, your own body, your own mind. You can draw in that soul of the baby if you want to, or you can say, no, I don't want this. But you've got to be in a conscious partnership with another person who's as conscious as you to create that. And most people aren't. You know, so many people even have to be drunk to have sex. So, you know, imagine what soul you're drawing in through that.
Or how you're leaving yourself open for other entities to steal your sexual experience because you're drunk. And you're going to
And
black out at the end after an incredible experience. Yeah, it was good, but all of that Kundalini energy never made it to your crown chakra.
no, and
And
I
an
see
entity has a perfect space to get it into your tailbone.
yeah, and a lot of people don't realize, you know, I know this myself, and I know this because I've seen it with so many clients. They're like, I wasn't really attracted to that person, but somehow some energy from my sacral chakra like drew me to them. And I'm like, yeah,
Exactly.
that's entities trying to control you sexually, and they're controlling you, and they're moving you around to certain people, and then, you know, your soul lineage has been corrupted way back in the day, so you're just drawn to all these kinds of dysfunctional people. And yet there is a sacral pull, and there might even be a sexual obsession with this person, but the other chakras aren't connecting with the
Right.
person.
And that sexual pull you're talking about is the classic example of karma coming to bite you in the ass. Contracts that you've closed thousands of centuries ago, but the system of domination and control has confused other people who still have open contracts to broadcast to you in unawareness that you still have a contract with them. And because you don't know you have a contract, you have a pull, and the entity has the angle to puppet you around to go have that recreational sex 25 times in 6 months, or whatever it turns out to be. Because what is that individual searching when they're allowing the entity to do it? Because they don't know how to have the experience, and they're just letting it be the roller coaster ride and roller coaster ride and roller coaster ride.
And one of the other things that happens when people still have a contract with someone is you might not have had physical sex with that person in this dimension, but if you're just laying, relaxing, they can have astral sex with you.
Yep.
So they're having sex with you in another dimension, but you can feel physically like they've had sex with you, even though you may not even have kissed them or held their hand in this lifetime, but you may have met that person, but energetically they're coming to you and having sex with you, and that's happening for a lot of people.
And that's where masturbation, both for male and female, comes into projections of stuff onto people. I've worked with so many high frequency clients, people that are way up there, such as you, or even way all the way up into the media industry, that have so much sexual masturbatory projections on them that they can't function anymore. And it gets bad because some people have these really powerful fantasies, from once upon a time to domination and control to raw porn fantasies that are being projected. And this is just the perfect breeding ground for sexual dysfunction, and dangerous astral sexual encounters that can easily be hijacked by other entities.
Yeah, and then this is why these obsessions start,
Mhm.
and people, you know, they don't talk about it because there is no outlet in our society. You know, I've had a few clients who come to see me, and because they feel they can trust me and they can tell me the truth, and I'm not going to judge them. But I've had guys come to see me who've said they've had this overwhelming desire to be abusive to children, but they've told me they haven't done it yet, but they were at that place where the thoughts were happening. But there is nowhere in our society to go for the healing apart from finding people like us who are not going to judge you, but we're going to help you clear out where that origin of that thought's coming from before you actually do those things.
Usually it's an entity that's causing that, or something in your karmic history or a family lineage. You know, most people that find themselves having those things like you were just describing, like wanting to abuse others. I have met women the same way who were abused as children and didn't know they were abused at 6 months or a year old, and their little bodies don't know what to do. And 15 years later or 25 years later, when there's a baby in their hand, it comes out of nowhere and shocks them. This would never be me.
Yeah,
well, it is.
That's what I've heard from men. I haven't sort of heard it from the women's perspective so much, but I have heard it from the men's perspective.
Quite a few women that I've worked that have coming out of the feeder industry for the Masonic temples. Quite a few of them, quite a few of the feeder industries for the different religious organizations where abuse started very, very, very early. Very early.
And I've seen guys in this lifetime who've been abused by their mother or their aunt, you know, as a child. So I've seen it as the adult side. And there are so many giveaways, okay? For example, I can look at a lot of women in this lifetime who say they're spiritual, okay? But and I know you'll go, oh, but that's jewelry, that's jewelry. But trust me, if you're wearing a gold bangle around your arm up here, and it might be a snake bangle, the reason you're drawn to wear that bangle is because you've been in temples, sexual temples in previous timelines. You're wearing the bangle. It's a giveaway that you need to heal that timeline. And you might go, oh, I'm into Tantra in this lifetime, it's okay. And you may try and justify it as being a healing kind of Tantra, but it's nonsense.
It's nonsense,
you know?
Because the cult of Isis, which was the one that pervaded the sacred masculine and sacred feminine view of sacred sensuality and sexuality at about 12 million years ago, was totally hijacked, and all of the high priests and priestesses were killed and stuck into the sacred waters of life at the temples. And from that point, there has been no true sacred masculine and feminine teachers out there other than those who've incarnated and made it past the system of domination and control. And I'm so glad that you called it that armband, because there are other things too, like people that wear the nose ring, okay, or the eyebrow ring, or just that little crystal that pops out on your nose there. You want to know what that is? That means you're the second, third, or fourth in a harem. And that determines in which sexual order you are going to have children, and the observance of other servants who weren't eunuchs of who could possibly have a relation, because they could trade you out of the harem if that other person in the court liked you enough or wanted to use you for one of their sexual slaves.
Oh, that's fascinating, because I always question, why are people doing these things? You know, like, why are they doing this? But that's great, because that, you know, I worked out obviously the gold bangle thing, but I hadn't worked out the nose ring.
Okay, then the people that have like 7, 8, or 10, or 15 earrings, take a guess at what that is. That person has been trained in sacred sexuality to the highest degrees and is owned by multiple families spread over the globe, and can be called at any moment psychically or physically to provide sexual healing. And
should we talk about tattoos as well? Because I know it's so controversial. I wrote about tattoos before, and people came down on me like, no, tattoos are lovely. Well, I'm sorry, you might think they're lovely, but from my perspective, you know, and people are being tattooed to the hilt right now. They show, to me, this is my take on it, they show who owns you and who's controlling you. Absolutely. Even now in this timeline, they will show who is owning you and who is controlling you. And don't try and tell me, oh, I'm vegan and I look at what I eat and I'm so careful and I'm raw, when you've got plastic plastic ink under your skin, polluting your system. Okay, but understand that it's not a free will choice. You've opted out of the free will choice. You think it's your free will choice to go and get these tattoos and these sacred symbols you're having placed on your body, but you're just showing who you've been sold to.
There is a branding aspect to that, because there was a time at around 4800 BC where they tried mass tattooing the whole population to change the way the skin suit alchemized negative energy, and there's a lot of people that actually learned some very powerful techniques to break out of reincarnation from tattoos. So it's faded through the four paradox timelines, and a lot of that has bled through. And the reason it's being abused now is because materialism and consumerism and capitalism has turned the industry, which was meant to be a sacred expression, into something that is no longer a sacred expression. And just like you were saying, I have people that come to me when they ask about their tattoos, and I'm like, it shows you were branded by your soul, or it's cool, it looks good, but in 30 years from now, are you going to have that same belief system when you're old and wrinkly? The answer is no. I mean, there are other tattoos that people get that signify, good moments in their life or the death of a child. That's a little different. Again, you have some sacredness behind that tattoo. If there's no sacredness behind that tattoo and you're just doing it to have a tattoo on your body because you're turning 18 or you're turning 16 or whatever it is, it's the tramp stamp on your back that everyone's going to see when looking out your ass, that's your choice. But that's a belief system that's going to be there for a long time. And the second that tramp stamp is on your ass, every man in the future who can remote view is going to be looking for that. And guess what? You have just given them full access to your tailbone. And I have given this healing conversation and speech to more strippers than I can let you know, who have been trying to figure out why they keep getting taken over of entities years after they're out of the industry. And it's because of that tramp stamp that every man has seen waving dollar bills at you. And for those that don't know what a tramp stamp is, it's a tattoo that goes right over your tailbone and right over your ass. So when your pants go down, that's all they see is that tattoo.
And I know it's painful for people if they're listening and they've done these things, okay? But you've got to forgive yourselves. Like, you know, it's like everything. It's like when you've done something and then you hear people explaining it, you get all defensive and go, no, they must be wrong, they must be wrong. No, don't go, oh, they must be wrong. Go, okay, what if what they're saying is from the heart and it's a truth? If that's true, okay, maybe you can't get rid of the tattoo and maybe you don't want to, but you can go, okay, I'm not going to be controlled by this now.
Exactly.
I'm going to take the wisdom,
the belief.
Yeah, and I'm going to heal from this, and I'm going to turn it neutral, like you say, alchemize, and I'm going to move on from that. But I'm not going to be jerked around this planet by the things that I've done.
Right, because you had a Chinese symbol of peace on your arm that really didn't mean peace, but 5,000 years ago it meant war, and you have no idea that you just put a war symbol on your arm, and your dreaming body's going, what the fuck? Like, literally. I see that so many times. People that are peace, love, unity, and respect, and they got tattoos all over their body that say war, destruction, and hate. What's that coming through? Okay, how was the tattoo artist a part of that? Did the tattoo artist know what it means, war and hate? No, he didn't, because his whole concept is hijacked. You know, when it comes to tattooing, the original way was a shaman would do it, and it was a long process of learning how to do it. And you had to be more than an artist. You had to be a shaman or some type of ritual specialist, because you were doing great harm to the skin of that person, and that tattoo would represent great significance in the power of that person's spiritual expression. And now, like the Maori or the Mauans, all of them, all of those tattoo organizations, the Chinese, the Japanese, all of them have their own tattooing organizations that have sacredness and spirituality behind them. And yes, some of them have demonic concepts behind them too, but it's, again, their own spiritual expression. Tattooing does not have that as a general industry anymore. There are a handful of tattoo artists out there that know the true spirituality. And I'm not putting down those people that are incredible artists. You do great work, but we're here talking about energy. And you can alchemize the energy of the tattoo. The energy of the tattoo artist is always in your arm until you remove it. Think of that. signature frequency. You're having someone come in with their signature frequency of needles and spending an hour on your arm or on your back or on your sacred centers. Well, guess what? That person's energy is permanently impressed into you with every needle hit. And until you alchemize that energy out, alchemize the energy out of the artwork, and allow your own creative expression to inspire that to be something of healing, just like Andrea was saying, alchemizing it and changing it and healing from it. And then that thing that it's on your body has much different multi-dimensional meaning instead of third-dimensional capitalistic meaning of $150 for 2 hours of tattooing.
And you know, it's like whatever you do, whether it's tattoos or anything,
Or basketball.
You can change everything. Okay, you're not stuck with what you've done. It's like you can heal energetically from it. It doesn't have to scar you physically or mentally forever. You know,
Exactly.
this is the process where we really turn everything around. We've all done stuff in all the timelines of our existence. We've all been the light, the dark. You know, when you don't want to face your shadow side now, then you can't truly heal yourself. And this is why I see a lot of people not doing the inner journey work. They're like, oh, what if I find out that I've been somebody terrible? For sure, you probably will. You've got to find out you were someone truly terrible to heal yourself. You know, in the beginning when I started regressing people, you know, people only wanted to see the stuff that was done to them. But as they get more evolved, they go, okay, bring it on. Show me what I did, because you've got to be prepared to see what you did to truly heal and evolve yourself and forgive, forgive, forgive.
Absolutely. Forgive, forgive, forgive. If you don't have forgiveness in your toolbox, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not changing the flat tire on your spirituality without it.
Yeah,
Period.
and
You're not. It's simple.
it's like, you know, you've got to forgive yourself, forgive the other people. And then some people like, well, I don't want to forgive the other people because it'll mean that I'm justifying what they did. I'm like, no, it won't mean you're justifying what they did. You're forgiving their soul, not their actions.
And
so
yourself.
you can be free, and yourself, so you can move on, you know, to a better outcome.
See, there's so many people that forgive others, but don't forgive themselves 100%. And that's where perverted attachments come into being. And a lot of that comes to, like, back to the masturbation scenario. People have perverted attachments to perverted love based off of a fantasy after multiple years of masturbation to a single person's concept. And let's say it's somebody that you work with or somebody that you go to school with. That person is affected by your energy, and you don't know it. And if you do, what are you doing? Are you domination and control? Are you a being of love and sovereignty? And I hate to put it in those stark terms, but it has to have a line. This is third dimension. This is fourth dimension. Everything we create crosses over and is intertwined. And my sovereignty doesn't end at my nose. It ends at my blue body level. All of the other expressions I have. Just because you're not doing anything to be here in the now, and you're kicking the crap out of my blue body over there, you are still doing bad. Okay? I call those the entourage, because people have these entourage of other versions of themselves and healing guides who have lost their way because they don't know how to communicate to you, and they're just using your spiritual contracts to put you in situations of growth, even if it causes great harm to you. And that's where this entourage, such as using masturbation again, can lead you into heavy-duty obsession. Okay? Obsession tries to teach what?
I feel like, well, it's just trying to control you.
It's teaching you something, to be submissive. So many people miss the key. Obsession is teaching you to be submissive.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just giving you power away. It's another form of giving. And also, I think what people are doing to desensitize their genitalia is all like the industry of sex toys. Is just like desensitizing their genitalia.
Well, no. When it comes to sex toys, they have an actual very positive thing, because there are so many men and women who are disconnected that the person's arm or sexual organs don't have the capability of getting through them. and you literally need no love, because that's how they've trained themselves in their own masturbation scenarios, is to have no physical touch. So if you have a person using a toy, the non-physical touch transfers the energy and it actually allows the proper stimulation, and that can be very easily abused, just like cigarettes, from going 1 or 2 cigarettes a day to 3 packs a day, and it can become very detrimental to your long-term sexual health. But yes, but they can be very, very healing for specific people that have touch issues.
Mm. I
And I'm
suppose I kind of see it on the extreme of how
extreme, right?
far we've drifted.
And I see
And
that too. And I see you
yeah,
see that in the porn industry of trying to teach that from these toys that are gigantic that should cause absolute pain to the person, but they're showing ecstasy, but that person is paid to show ecstasy, and the human being doesn't make that connection because of the cognitive dissonance.
yeah. I mean, when we step back and we see, we know in our hearts how far we've drifted from love. We've drifted.
I don't know. There are a lot of beings that really don't know how far they drifted from love because they've learned how to give love and not receive love. And
Mm.
that is just as broken as everyone else if you can give and not receive. Or if you can receive and not give, or vice versa, you receive part-time, you're still in a scenario where you're not understanding love and you're still not allowing the natural functions, and there becomes opportunities and room for tremendous misunderstandings of love because of the fog and haze in our world of shame, blame, and guilt. There are people that are in love with guilt. How
Yeah.
can you be in love with guilt?
Well, they seek out situations where it's good, like you say, they're in love with guilt, so they create scenarios which will make them more guilty because
And they
it's like it
subconsciously
works.
create them.
Yeah, it's like home for them. Home is guilt, so they have to keep creating situations where they feel that emotion. It's a bit like when you see children being removed from an abusive parent situation, they will still show love to the abuser because that's home for them. That's what they know.
That's all they know. Exactly. All that they know.
And it's
So
like I heard you talking about and I'm very hot on this, is like, test tube babies and all that stuff. It's like, we've drifted from our natural ability to conceive, and then when you make babies in a test tube, the molecules and the vibrations, there is no normal cosmic energy happening. It's controlled. So where is that energy coming from?
it's coming from the belief system that our culture has been modified to understand that you can have a birth out of a womb, because it took 50 years for science to introduce it to us, and that's how belief systems get hijacked over generation over generation. And that's what these species off-world are dealing with. They have no sex organs. And they look to us and our genetics so that they can get their sex organs, so they can save their species from extinction, because nobody wants to live in a body that has no human love in it, that has no love in it, where they come out of a body as a teenager with no childhood years, just science. They're there to be scientific workers. They don't want to do that. So they come to our world where we've got everything and some bad stuff too, but oh boy, it's way better of an experience over here, and those other beings in those other worlds are learning their mistakes, and they're wanting to change it. And some of them come here and do nefarious things because they become zealots, because they are so afraid of their species of extinction, and they will do whatever it does, even if it puts us under the thumb of control. Okay, you look at why our species is set up this way. We're a giant DNA Walmart. And I have said that many, many times. You're a DNA Walmart. That's why your passports, your IDs, all of that stuff, and all the laws passed for DNA harvesting based off the Human Genome Project. And we can go back and find out that the Human Genome Project was supported by every country in the world. And when they found out everything, they sold it all to who? Big Pharmacopoeia. None of the world received any of the benefits of the Human Genome Project. None of it. And what did the Human Genome Project do? It took our DNA and began selling it as intellectual property.
Yeah, I
Okay?
saw an interview with a lady who claimed that her DNA was used to clone Dolly the sheep.
Yep, I've
Um,
interviewed her many, many times. Her
yeah.
name's Cynthia, Cynthia Brewer, and her story is real. They've tried to kill her 15 times, and she's come back from the dead, and that's why they're so afraid of her. They put the cocktail that they kill the inmates with her. They put that in her after they took a 12-pound tumor out of her hip, and she still lived.
Mm.
Right? They can't kill her. And that's the biggest to fear of her, is because they discovered the DNA of immortality. But in her own mind, she can die, and that's why they've tried to give her, this woman, such a horrible lifetime, try to fracture her mind. And that's ultimately is a reflection of what was done to us 15 million years and 18 million years ago, when we had that DNA fully active and we were powerful manifesting beings that cracked our minds and that cracked our souls. And this has come to this idea of soul separation and soul shards spread over many different timelines and dimensions. And this is where much of the information that I'm talking about timeline genocide, is going to be some of the biggest healing for some of those people that are so confused of why isn't it not working now? It's because you're missing a key part of yourself that was supposed to be here and integrated into this I am presence of choice.
Yeah, and it goes back to like what I was saying at the really beginning, is when you are exposed to the truth, you will have an emotional reaction, even if it isn't completely your soul story. If you can hear someone else's soul story and overlaps yours, you'll have an emotional reaction. That's why when you read some of the spiritual books that have channeled some of the darkest abuse that's happened on this planet, when you read it, you'll cry and you'll shake, because it's in your DNA and it will facilitate a healing for you, as well as maybe going to do the one-to-one stuff with people like Andrew and I. You've got to clear those timelines out, and you've got to get rid of this belief that anything that you're going to see and experience is going to be worse than what you're living. Trust me, it's only going to be better than what you're living now by going and clearing that stuff out.
Absolutely. If you don't go and clear that stuff out, it's just going to stay there and stay there and stay there until the time of the awakening comes, and you're going to be one of the big group of people in the masses sitting there going, what next? I don't have enough sovereignty to know what to do next. And those people that have just enough sovereignty to know what to do next are going to look at you and go, I want to help, but I barely can do what I can do. And then those people that are light years ahead and are in their full sovereignty are going to do what? Have to be leaders and been put into a scenario where those people with not very much power may give what little power they have to us, and we'll go, I don't want your power. Keep it. Self-heal, self-nurture, listen to the wisdom, apply it to yourself, learn subtle energy, take yourself back to nature. I mean, this has been the message for thousands of years from thousands of oracles throughout all spans of dimensions and times, in every language and light language possible. It all says the same thing. How many more times do we have to tell it for people for them to get it? That has been this thing I faced over and over and over again, and I've come to understand, as long as the system of domination and control is in place, they are already planning our future lives. And until you, the individual, get enough of your energy back from the system of domination and control so it cannot plan your next life, to not guarantee you a partial life review, so you have enough of that sovereignty back, this continues in stagnation, this experience that we're having. There will be no destruction, there will be no aliens, there will be no laws, it'll all go on, there'll be another president, there'll be all of that will continue until we get to that point where enough of energy, because they're creating our future lives. That's how this system works. That's how they can do all this stuff to us in real time in this thing, because they've created our future. And we in the moment can take it back in awareness, day by day, hour by hour, second by second, year by year, belief system by belief system.
And I think in tune to what you're saying is, I think another controversial subject, I think, is people following, for want of a better word, false spiritual teachers.
Gurus.
The whole Indian guru thing. And people won't like it that we're going to say it, because, you know, it's going to offend them, because they've been following gurus. And I know from my own experience, because I got given this, you know, third dimensional award a while back, I got to go into the Houses of Parliament, the House of Commons. I was at a lot of events there, and they had some mainstream, well-known gurus there who, you know, it was supposed to be a private discussion about, you know, evolving consciousness for humanity, helping them. You know, I threw into one big high-profile guru, you know, don't you think we should use the media to enlighten humanity and give humanity their power back? And this guy just went, no, 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 we'd have hippies and communes. I'm thinking, what, you mean people wouldn't be going to your place in India where you've got hundreds of thousands of followers? And the thing is with all the Indian gurus, there is a truth in what they're saying. It's not that there is not a truth in what they're saying, but they don't give you 100% of the truth because they want to control you. So they have to hold back a percentage, and it's the same with any of these, you know,
All of the
spiritual.
religions, they all hold it
Yeah,
back. They all want it to be a
yeah.
tiered system. And as long as it's a tiered system of external belief and not internal belief, even though the Indian ones that you're saying, I've encountered myself with those gurus. People have tried to label me as the big guru, the one. I present myself as who I am. I've never presented myself anything other than what it is that I can do. If people misunderstand what I can do, that's you. That's your belief. I'm not judging you in any way, shape, or form. And that's where so many people get mad at me, that I don't judge them as me being me as the galactic historian, the sacred neutral perspective, with all of this information that's going through my head, whether I'm awake or I'm asleep, this is my existence here on this world, and I'm going to make the best of it. And I'm going to be happy every day I wake up. And I'm not going to let the angers of others put me down. I'm not going to let the factionism take away from what it is that I need to do, which is to present heart-space truth. And as that heart-space truth in my heart gets deeper and my connection to the world, there are more and more people who are 1 degree of separation of me who will find it in their heart to wake up. And I will lead by example and lead by example and put out material, whether it's hard or soft or easy or tough to chew. I will put it out there in the frequency of truth so everybody can come to their own state of awakening and say, I'm ready. And if it was Andrea or Andrew or Alfred Lamont Weber or Vinnie Eastwood or any of the other truther hosts out there that motivated you into that point of saying, I want to change something, then so be it. I group
Well,
myself with the rest of the truthers. I am
it's
no
like
more special than anyone else, but there are people that believe with my special talent that I could change the world, and the answer is I can, but I can't change the world without the world wanting to be changed at the same time. That's why the message comes out the way it does.
Well, it's like, you know, everyone who's sharing the truth is just planting seeds, but it's like, you know, what I say is like, we're doing this work now because that's what we're called to do, but we'll be out of a job, and we're happy to be out of a job because then the work's done. You know, we have no attachment to being the guru or anything like that. And it's like at the beginning of my awakening, I very rarely share this because in the beginning I thought, oh, this could be perceived in an ego way, but it's like 14 years ago, Mother Teresa spoke to me and said, don't make the same mistake I made. You know, I didn't learn to love myself, was what she said. She said, you need to learn to love yourself. I burnt myself out trying to help the people, but I didn't really love myself. And also, sometimes when we want to rescue people, we're taking away the very experience their soul needs for their soul growth. So you think you're helping them, but actually you're taking away a crucial experience they need to learn how to get out of that experience. So when you come along and you go, it's a bit like I've seen, here's a fantastic example. I was with a friend at a zebra crossing, and they tried to help the disabled person across the road, and like the disabled person wasn't even crossing the road. But they projected their desire to help and rescue as trying to whip that person across the road when actually the person even didn't want to cross the road. And it's like the metaphor for what we're doing with people when we think, oh, I'm going to help these people and I'm going to give them this money and I'm going to rescue them and I'm going to feel good in myself because I rescued this person and took them from where they were and improved their life. But actually, they missed out on the life skills then of how to get themselves there themselves, which was what they needed. But your ego needed to be the big rescuer.
I call those light tyrants. And it's important because we're going to take these terms, you're talking victim, victimizer, abuser, tyrant, dictator. All of those apply to these description we are, and those are light tyrants. Those people that you know, if you happen to throw a cigarette out the window and they flip out on you, that's a tyrant. Instead of saying, hey, you know, you could have just stuck it in the ashtray, you don't need to go onto that super anger. And when someone's a light tyrant, that makes you wonder what's inside that being, that rage can just flow off in the light energy. And you really got to wonder, why is that rage coming out into something like that? You know, light tyrancy, dictatorship, victim, victimizer, abuser, all of those descriptive adjectives that describe the archetypes of our cultural inheritance, and I call that a cultural inheritance because that's where it exists. You don't become a victim or a victimizer unless it's been done to you, or you're doing it to someone else. and it's brought to you at the very youngest of ages. And that's where some of the most greatest healings can do, is just identifying yourself. Was I the victimizer very subtly? Was I the passive aggressive? Was I the victim? Did I set myself up to be a victim over and over again in these relationships? And when you look at that, because a lot of what Andrea and I does is brings this to the truth so you can see where you did your mistakes in your own visceral understanding. And from there is where that healing takes place, where you can take that signature frequency of that archetype, whether it's the victim or the abuser, and say, no, you don't have access to my energy space anymore. I am dissolving all contracts, vows, and agreements with you, and beginning the healing process so that that signature frequency and habit pattern never returns to my heart expression or my brain expression or my sensual or sexual expression.
And I think when you look at your life and you see what's coming at you, you know, when you get to the point where I can see the pattern, you know, I can see the pattern of what I'm drawing into me, and you don't like it, then you know you have to do the inner journey work. And you don't need to sit there struggling at home doing it because you've got this belief that it's bad to seek help or whatever. It's like, no, people here who are awake, who are able to do this work, there's no point if nobody seeks our help. Like, we're not doing what we came to do. Right. And it's like when we talked the other day about, you know, the birthing experience, and you asked me, did I remember my birth? And I had a rebirthing because I paid money to go and see a lady and have a rebirthing experience because I couldn't access it on my own, you know. And I saw, which was really amazing for me, because I saw that I came here as infinite consciousness. I left my star family. I felt the sadness. I came here as infinite consciousness. I did not come here for any karma with my mother. I didn't come here to clear my own karmic experience. I came here as an act of love to planet Earth. That was the experience. In the experience of being here, I completely forgot that till recently. You know, it was completely like locked out of my reality. I had an awareness that I'm sure I came here, but it's all got confused now.
And that's an example of DNA memories that are past life memories that are supposed to be legacy memories. So every lifetime you have, you can actually like challenge the birth canal of the great forgetting and the deep sleep of the womb that you can come through. And there are many scenarios in reincarnation phase where your DNA memories have been confused, or even your light body memories have been put into the wrong DNA body. I've run so many clients that were in the wrong DNA skin suit. They should have been born in another one, and they don't have those legacy memories that they're supposed to have that allow them to go through the different remembering processes taught by thousands of mystery schools over millions of years.
Do you think that's part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of people who are saying they're in the wrong physical body, the wrong gender?
Absolutely.
I think
the fact that there are many, many men who chose to be a woman this lifetime and haven't, and vice versa. And then you include the surgery concepts of transiting, and that has made it to the astral world as an option, and it's a butchery version, but it gets the job done for that soul's need at that moment.
And yet I feel, because I haven't, I did a TV show once about this, but I had a feeling that if there were people, I have never come across anyone who'd be willing to do the inner journey work, because by the time I've come across those kinds of people, they're already on hormone replacement therapy, so I wouldn't want to mess with their minds then. But I think if you had people who were at the point going, this is not the body I wanted to incarnate into, this is all wrong, I have a theory that if we did the emotional inner journey work with them, they could then be happy in the physical body that they've been given.
Well, I'll tell you something I've never said on air. There was a client that was going through hormone therapy to go from a man to be a woman, and I helped him. He had a severe car accident, and that's how I had first met him. And he had a steel cage put into his back. Quite a difficult scenario, so I got to know him quite well from the healer's perspective. And I talked to him about his sexuality and the confusion that he experienced, and he believed that he should have been a woman. And he went along with the surgery, and after the surgery I did a tremendous amount of healing on him, and the surgery scars disappeared, and his DNA actually changed to being a woman.
Oh, wow.
His male DNA was gone. It finished his link in the brain. And when he went to have blood tests, and he ended up having a baby.
Wow.
natural inception, but he doesn't want to
Natural.
be publicly known. He doesn't want to be publicly known, and there have been hundreds of cases like this, and there have been actually hundreds of cases of women having spontaneous birth, no sexual intercourse
Yeah,
whatsoever, and in fact,
parthenogenesis.
science has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples spread over the last 1,000 years. And
Yeah,
this is just something that's natural in the woman's body. You reach a certain point of hormonic energy, and an egg will come down and it'll literally reproduce you as a twin.
it's
And
called
many have come to full term and grown.
yeah, it's parthenogenesis. Um, there's a guy, I forget his name, but he wrote a fantastic article on it. Um, they said, but what he was trying to say was it's predominantly females that you conceive within yourself.
Correct.
It would not be a male.
Self-cloning, but there have been
Yeah.
very few scenarios where there was a male energy because that woman should have been man in the first place.
Mm. It's so fabulous, isn't it? All the stuff out there that people are like,
Yeah.
ah, it's like,
Well,
you know,
Andrea, we've got about 8 minutes left in the show, and we've had a fabulous, and I'm sure we're going to do more and more shows.
tangent.
Why don't we talk about what the second show could be about? Get some hinters in here. Let's maybe we had a kind of a broad subject here. Maybe we can even take a
If
vote
anybody,
on the
yeah,
different
I was just
Facebook
going to
pages.
say,
Over the next few days, we'll look at it, and why don't we just do another show next week?
yeah, and let's just, if anybody wants to put how they felt about what we've talked about. I know we've kind of covered so many tangents and subjects, and that might that might be my fault because I go all over the place.
I do it too.
Like,
You're right up my alley.
yeah, but it's kind of like if you have an idea, you can streamline us down to subjects, that you're genuinely interested in and you want answers to. I'm sure I'm sure Andrew has the answer, and I can throw in my two penneth worth.
My answers come from the perspective of the
Yeah.
neutral world, and sometimes you don't need the neutral perspective to understand it. There are others that need a polarized perspective. But we're at the time where all perspectives have to be presented, and when you and I come in together, it's a great opportunity of expansion for everyone.
Well, it's like I can do the work with the people. That's what I know. I can do the work. I don't necessarily have to explain the history, but I can take them to the origin of their stuff and clear it out. And so I don't necessarily have the ability to hold this history at this point in time. I can't do what you do. I can't sit there and come out with this whole 54 million years of history.
I
But when
don't
I
hold
hear
it.
it,
That's your honor, but I don't hold it. It's all a stream. I
yeah,
mean, as soon as I say it out loud once, it's part of my cellular memory. And there are times that I go and I research subject matters in the Akashic Record for my own personal in advancement that has no application to what's going on in our world now. And then there are other times where I thought 15 years ago that this was just something only I'd understand, and now there's 5 or 6 or 7 people talking about these concepts, and I have gigantic volumes of Akashic records that could be opened up and brought on this subject. Like when I started talking about the sacred masculine mystery schools or the cults of Isis or what was going on in Atlantean Lemuria during the timeline genocides, there was no one else talking about that. And now there's a handful of people that are understanding and talking about it publicly because they've made the connection between the timeline concepts of Project Pegasus and what vague truth it did bring out versus what I'm talking about is this has been our legacy since the very beginning, and it has not ended since it started 54 million years ago. And now we have a chance to become aware of it, and it's our awareness that actually creates the opportunity to end. Where on the 4 other previous paradoxes we are simultaneously existing, that actual opportunity of end didn't come. It was a forced end in which a paradox put us back to the beginning of a new experience, while the other experience had to start from the beginning and simultaneously run its same mistakes over and over again.
yeah. I think for some people, they don't even understand they're getting out of this reincarnation grid
Yeah.
that's been locked down on planet Earth. This is a whole new concept for them because some people don't even understand that they're a star being coming from other galaxies and civilizations to be here, and they've had time on all these different star systems to be here. And the thing is, though, the thing we keep repeating and saying is, this is a big gig to be here right now. This is like
the biggest.
To be chosen to be here right now. And that's why we've had so many people on the planet, because so many people just came for the end of the Mayan long calendar and they're leaving now because that was their contract. You know, they can go. They weren't here for the longevity. So you probably will see a lot of people die out on this planet because they were never meant to be here after the end of that.
They're not going to die out. They're going to leave in the dream world. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Everyone's been contracted to be here at the end, and well, a lot of it is a lot of it will be walk in, walk out scenarios where people are like, I'm done. In this physical body, I will leave as a shell, just like a hermit crab leaving a shell on the beach for another one to take over. But it'll all be done in the dream world, and everyone will have their perfect exodus or exit or leaving or vacation, whatever they will. It'll find the right way because it's a process of remedy and resolve now. Justice and judgment is no longer part of our cultural inheritance.
Yeah, and it's like, I suppose the last couple of things to say is there were less accidents on, well, there's really no accidents on this planet. It's all by divine choice. You know, you're choosing all these experiences because they're going to be beneficial to you on a soul level, you know, and there are no victims and victimizers.
You're absolutely right. But at the same time, when you're stuck in it, those words that you say seem callous. But they're meant from love. They're meant from love. But it's, again, that misunderstanding.
It's like, yeah, I know people sometimes have an issue with what I say, and it's like, because I am coming from love, but I'm coming from non-judgment. I'm coming from where I've come to. So I do understand, I do have compassion, and I do have empathy for what people are going through. But I'm also trying to be a catalyst to pull you out of that. And even if I'm making you annoyed, I'm actually triggering you to move away from where you've been, from the victim story. Because if I pander to you, I'm not helping you to evolve out of it. I'm anchoring you further into the victim story, and that doesn't help anybody.
Right. And if you continue to pander as a professional, you compromise your moral code, which so many people in the industry have had to face every day, and there's nothing for them to fall back on that industry. There's no union or anything like that. None of the light workers have ever organized to tell the government we are an industry, because if you ever did, what would happen? What would happen?
We're only doing it for entertainment purposes, remember?
Right. We're only doing it for entertainment purposes. What if all of us entertainers organized? I mean, kind of that's what we're talking at Tara Hill here, is all us entertainers organized and say we're not entertainers anymore. We're sovereign manifested beings in your facade reality, and we're going to change your facade reality. How's that for you?
Yeah. And I love your soul contract revocations. Revocations, yeah, they're great. They're 17 pages. If you haven't seen them, you can just download them for free on Andrew's website.
Yeah, you can go to galactichistorian.com.
Yeah, galactichistorian.com. I've read them out maybe 4 times. You know, because they're 17 pages. You've got to put a bit of time aside for them. But they are very powerful, and you will see when you read them out where you have some stories still, because what you find is emotion comes up as you hit the key stuff that you've still to process.
Mm-hmm. And I've had so many people go through that exact same process you're talking. I have people had full spontaneous, full body awakenings. Other people that were in crowds that were doing flash mobs that literally glowed white when they read the Sacred Feminine, and a man that did the same thing. I mean, again, it's your belief system that gets challenged when you run across these visceral understandings. There are others that are one step away from claiming their genetic legacy, and all they needed was to tell the system no for a few minutes so that they could recharge their own batteries. And as you begin to look at contract revocations and hopefully write your own, don't just use mine, write your own. Use those as a basis, a foundation, and to create great creative and inspiration where you can use your own mind to psychically remove spiritual contracts during moments in your own history. so that the present being no longer has that signature frequency of pain or misunderstanding or ignorance or intolerance still a part of it.
But they're good. What you wrote was fabulous. I mean, did you just write that in one fell swoop?
The first three I wrote in 45 minutes. I had been working on those um, psychically on a blue body level for some time, and I had to do it in such a way that it couldn't be detected by the system of domination control because they've identified me in timeline sight, as you well know. Anyone that's a public figure is identified in timeline viewing. So I literally devised it in the ethereal worlds at the deepest away places in the different parts of myself, and then unified myself for one brief moment of about 45 minutes where I put the first three onto paper, released those. Then I wrote the Divine Masculine when I was in Mount Shasta. The Divine Feminine I co-wrote with Hope Moore. I did a lot of the final editings on it to make it into the way because it needed the woman's touch on that. And I give as much credit as due to Hope for that because she was an incredible inspiration at that moment to get that work out. And when you combine all of them, the masculine, the feminine, the government, the banking, and the media, it shows you how far our spirits have been taken at every level of the expression. And that's what I do. I describe every level of the expression as the Galactic Historian. Because if we don't know that we can express that way or have an experience that way, you'll never go into it.
Yeah. No, you cover everything. When I've read them out to people initially, they, because they weren't exposed to them, they weren't expecting the depth of what they are. And they were all like crying, and they're like, "Wow, that's powerful stuff." And it is. Just using those words is really powerful to reclaim your sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got just about a minute left here, so why don't you give out your website
Okay,
and contact it? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, look at me, how quick. My website's andreafoulkes.co.uk, which is AndreaFoulkes.co.uk. It's been down 3 times in the last month, but it's up right now.
And you're also on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and I have loads of free clips linked to my website, but on YouTube as well, of light language and me talking about evolving consciousness and all kinds of things from, the work that I do, the inner journey work. I like to talk about everything. I like to talk about food because I'm into raw food. So I cover all those topics. Because I just think everything, there's no little stone unturned, but the deeper inner journey work is what I do with people on a private level and in workshops and retreats and things. And I'm all about walking outside in nature as well.
As am I. And if people would like to get a hold of me, you can go to my website, galactichistorian.com. You can sign up for the League of Consciousness Explorers. There's a bunch of free videos. You can check out Galactic Historian on YouTube as well as Galactic Historian on Facebook. And if you'd like to book a session with me, there is a office phone number at the top of the webpage there, an actual office phone number. Anyways, I want to thank Andrea and everyone that's helped produce the show, Adriana, Santi in the background who's on vacation in Spain. To remind everyone, I just have a recording for a Spanish broadcast that'll be released in about a week. If you'd like to hear the English side of the broadcast, for some people you may enjoy it because I slowed down very much to allow the simultaneous translator to go. You can check that out on YouTube at Galactic Historian. Thank you, Andrea. This has been an absolutely wonderful show.
Yay,
and everybody
awesome.
stay in tune to the websites, and Andrea and I are going to do another show sometime next week. And thank you, everyone. This has been a blast.
Bye.